And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is writer Christine Makepeace. She's written books such as The Sound of Breaking Glass, and you've seen her writing in places such as Dread Central and Certified Forgotten. Welcome to the show!
Hey, happy to be here.
I love matching that energy.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I am a listener of the show. I'm very excited to talk to you guys about things that have turned me into the ruined person I am today.
It's what we love to hear.
And again, it's always nice after talking to someone online and like editing each other's work. Like we've edited each other's work and read so much and DM'd. It's just like, oh my god, I'm actually talking to you. It's so weird, but it's awesome.
Yeah,
so,
weird and good. Weird and good.
Yeah, weird in a good way. But first, let's hear about you as a writer. Mm-hmm. How did you when did you realize that you wanted to be a writer?
It's super hack and cliche, but I've wanted to be a writer since I was a little tiny gal. I used to write books in elementary school, and they would get judged, and like just every year I would win. And I was like, well, I'm clearly very good at this. I didn't realize that those third grade skills might not translate to the real world as one for one, but I've kept the passion alive.
Hell yeah. So did you get into like fiction writing first or the nonfiction side of writing first? Like which kind of came first for you as a writer / journalist?
So fiction first, and then I don't know, I just never did anything with it. And back in the mid-2000s, I started writing for a magazine that does not exist anymore. And I didn't like the way they did anything, and I was very grumpy about them, so I went and started my own magazine, and that was Paracinema Magazine, and it ran from 2007 to 2012, I think. Wow. So during that period, all I did was write about movies, which was great, but it burnt me out in a really profound way. So after the magazine dissolved, I actually started writing fan fiction, like about the X-Men.
Oh, okay.
Fuck.
Oh, yes.
So I wrote some...
Fan fiction is a beautiful art form. I will hear absolutely no slander on fan fiction. It is incredible. The amount of shit, like pages that people can write is just, it's gorgeous. Anyway, I love fan fiction. I love fan fiction.
I agree with you. I started writing some fan fiction and getting just like flexing some muscles again. And then I was like, how about I write a book? And then I just kept writing books and interspersing nonfiction stuff. I can't stop writing about movies and talking about movies. I've tried and it just doesn't work. But I've officially transitioned to writing movies now. So I just put them both together.
That's
I was
amazing.
Like, writing about movies, writing stories. Why don't we just do this? So we'll see how that goes.
I want to go back, though. You said you wrote fan fiction about X-Men. Who's your favorite X-Men? X-Man?
Magneto. Yes.
Okay.
I know he's not, well, I mean, depends on what run you read. He's an X-Man. But X-Men, I love the X-Men. I've loved them since I was a little tiny person in the 90s. So, I don't know. There's like Rogue is my favorite X-Men, but like actually Magneto is. So
the animated series, big for you.
Yeah. Formative. Yes.
I love the X-Men.
It laid the groundwork, and then I was like, maybe I should read comic books. Boy, it just opened
I was never a big... So there are many times where like in hindsight, I'm like, I should have realized that I was gay because my entry point into comics was Wolverine. I did not buy any other comics, but I had Wolverine and I was enamored with him and I did not know why, but there was something about that short little hairy man that just like was doing it for me.
That is a heartwarming story. It's true. I mean, people say like, "Oh, X-Men is like, you know, the inclusive one and stuff." And for me, it was too. Like, that was what I cared about. I've since like read other comics and gotten into other characters, but when I was growing up, I couldn't be bothered with anything else. Like Batman, no, go away. I didn't care. It was just the X-Men.
Me neither.
And
just the X-Men, particularly Wolverine for me.
Looking back, it's like, oh yeah, okay, I kind of get that. But I can't say a bad thing about Wolverine, and he did make some appearances in my fan fiction. So.
Hell yeah!
Wow. Fuck, that's so good. That's fucking incredible. But so then I would love to hear how you got like into horror movies. Like how did you get introduced to horror? Was it a family thing? Did you find out about it on your own? Like how did the horror come into your life, basically?
It was definitely a family thing. Both my parents were like into movies. So like growing up, behind the TV, there was like a big Escape from New York poster. And
fuck yeah. Okay, cool. All right.
So like it was always, these genre movies were always around, and it wasn't like I like made, like one of the first movies my mom like specifically taped off TV to show me was Labyrinth. So like it was somebody was always feeding me something. So I never had a chance. But the first horror movie that I like really remember sitting down and like, I'm just gonna watch this, was Poltergeist, and it was someone has already chosen it to speak of, so I did not choose it to speak of, but it was the first one that really I didn't like the way it made me feel, but I also liked that I didn't like the way it made me feel, and I was like, all right, I'm coming back for more.
How old were you? Do you remember?
Probably like 7 or 8.
Okay.
Nice.
I was little. I was young, and it was a face ripping scene. I was eating a burrito, watching the face.
No, absolutely not. Terrible.
No.
On like a Sunday afternoon, and I was like, why did anybody who was watching me?
I mean, that whole sequence in food, in particular, like the steak that's like inching its way across and like maggots pouring out of it, to him ripping his face off, like that's a lot. Like it looks like meat as he's tearing his face off.
Does look like meat. Jelly, gross jelly. And then not long after, the afterbirth, when they pop out of the weird ceiling womb / another universe.
A lot of goopiness, and honestly, to this day, I'll watch most anything. Goopiness really gets me. I don't like things that are wet or like slimy or like, that genre.
I do wet and slimy.
Wet horror.
Yeah.
Society.
Yes, it's still like that. I guess.
Blob. Does the Blob fuck you up?
No, I like the Blob a lot.
Okay.
All iterations. I actually just listened to the Haley Piper episode with the Blob, and I love that movie. I don't know what it is. I have weird rules in my brain,
that's fair.
but I think it's the meatiness coupled with the goopiness.
Oh, this is turning my stomach.
I love this. And this is why you should read Christine's work. It is very descriptive. Really paints a visual picture for you about meaty goop.
Thank you.
Meaty goop. Oh.
New book title.
That is a phrase I never thought I would hear. Meaty goop.
Yeah, meaty goop.
Oh. How many times can like a movie say squelching though? Like that's
Squelching noises.
A subgenre.
Squelching continues.
Squelching continues.
Ugh.
That's a subgenre of horror, I think, and it's one that can turn my stomach.
I mean, I like it, but anyway, so then Christine, like growing up, then if you were watching horror, what were some of your favorites growing up?
Poltergeist.
Okay.
So this is actually going to tie into what we're going to be talking about.
Oh,
but
perfect.
I saw enough stuff. Like I remember walking down and catching my parents watching Nightmare on Elm Street, and then running upstairs and sitting in the middle of my bed with all the lights on and just not sleeping. So I realized very early that I did not like to be scared. So I avoided it for a really long time, like actively being scared.
Okay.
So, and what we'll be talking about is something that very much terrified me, and I think it laid the groundwork for the whole like, hey, maybe you shouldn't be looking at this stuff.
Huh.
So you were kind of a scaredy kid growing up?
I think so. Like I used to read Fear Street books. Like it was my job. So like I was always seeking it out, but there were like limits. I didn't want to get too freaked out and too petrified. So I think I definitely saw some stuff way too early and then pulled it back to something that was more age appropriate. So like, I used to, who am I kidding? I love slasher movies. And so that was my horror, like when I was in like my late teens. So it was like the Texas Chainsaws and eventually Scream and all that stuff. And then I would move on, I think, to maybe some of the more disturbing stuff, like I don't like haunted house movies really get to me. Ghosts really scare me. So later, that was something that I embraced.
So, but earlier it was like slashers and whatnot.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
What was your favorite growing up?
Halloween.
Halloween. Oh.
Absolutely. We watched Halloween like Halloween night when I was like 15, and
Hell yeah, cool.
and I was like, there's literally nothing better than this. This is the height. I will never be 15 watching Halloween on Halloween ever again. And I knew it at that moment. I was like, this is special. And that's how I feel about the genre as a whole. Like, I love slashers. I think they're such good like they're mirrors of what's happening in society at the time they're made. So I think they're really fascinating.
Yeah.
What is one of your favorite like recent slashers?
I don't know. That's a big question. I really liked the new Halloween movie. Not to continue to talk about Halloween forever. Halloween Ends. That's what we call that one. I
liked Halloween Ends.
I did.
Wow.
I was so high when I watched it. But like there were. Are we not Halloween Ends fans here?
Not really.
Yeah. Well,
But respect. Respect. It's just was not my thing.
I went on a real journey with that new trilogy because that first movie. So, like I said, growing up, I was all about the Halloween, and my youthful boyfriend at the time was also really obsessed with Michael Myers. He wasn't a great guy, so I was. That was my shorthand for that story. But watching
incredible. It everything we needed to know was right that he presented. Right, we knew everything we need to know about him.
Not a great guy. But so when Halloween came out and it like ended with that like Laurie taking him down and these women getting like I cried in the theater. It was just so cathartic. And then Kills comes out and I'm like what? Why did you do this to me? Like you pulled the rug out for. I had an article penned. I had ready to pitch it, and then I saw it, and I was like, "Oh no, I hate you all, and you ruined this franchise for me." Then I watched the last one, and I was like, "Wait a minute, is this genius?"
Huh?
Is it? Do you have an answer? What is your answer?
I think it is.
Oh, interesting.
I have a whole theory. This isn't Halloween cast, although it could be if you wanted it to be. But that first movie, I think that first movie is the movie that they wanted to make, and then they had to make, or agreed to make, or decided to make two more. And I think the other two don't have anything to do with the first one. So if you watch the third one as its own thing and kind of its own little analog to the original third film, Season of the Witch. And just in like slasher tropes in general, it kind of plays more like a goofy, non-serious send-up of the genre. When you try to watch all three together, they're not good. It's not good. It's not a good trilogy.
Huh. Okay.
Again, I will reiterate, I was very high when I watched that.
At this current moment, that feels incredibly generous of you, and I respect it. It just feels very generous, and that's okay. I did like the first one. I just don't like the other two. But that's okay.
Evil dies tonight.
When did it die? I don't remember.
Tonight. It's going to die tonight. Evil dies tonight, guys. Come on.
On that note, let's take a quick, brief break, and then we will come on back to talk about your Scarred for Life pick, Christine. And we're back. Wow. That was what a commercial break. So Christine, what movie / not movie, but what piece of media did you bring with you today for us to discuss?
Well, you sent me a handy dandy little list, and I had noticed that some other folks had some television on it. I couldn't think of anything. I even asked my husband. I said, what scared me? Because I couldn't pick Poltergeist. And he said Poltergeist, and I said, I can't pick that. So I sat there and I thought, what scared me? And truly, the only thing that gave me actual nightmares, like could not sleep because I knew I would dream about this, was Punky Brewster episodes. Punky Brewster season 2, episodes 6 and 7. Punky's Perils of Punky, I think, is what they're called.
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Horrifying.
Yes. So, just to set the scene for everybody who's not familiar with this at all, as I was not familiar at all, Punky and the gang go on a camping trip. When the children get lost in a cave, Punky tells a ghost story about an evil spirit who threatens the lake. That's part 1. And then part 2, the children do battle with an evil spirit when the ghost of an indigenous princess appears to tell Punky that it must be fought with love.
So, okay.
What?
All right. Before we get to your Scarred for Life story with this, can you take us back? What is Punky Brewster?
Yeah, what is Punky Brewster?
So,
I've heard people talk about Punky Brewster, but I did not know it was a small, girl. I didn't know it was a young girl.
It's a little lady. So I made a vow to not call myself old repeatedly during this, but I am old now, and I think
me
that's
too.
okay.
I should have been watching this. I don't know why I never watched this. I mean, I would have been 3 when it came out, when it started.
Yeah, so I was born in 82, and it started in 84 and went to 86, I believe, and then was in reruns. So I don't know when I saw it. I don't know what age I was, but I was very young, and Punky Brewster was a show I watched. It was just kind of on. It's about a little girl who gets abandoned at a grocery store, and then a nice man.
Oh, it's so sad. I was not expecting the foster parent thing in the opening. I was like, wait.
Yeah.
This is a show about an abandoned child.
It truly is. And then a landlord adopts her. And I don't typically like landlords, but Henry's really nice and he takes care of her. And she has a group of friends. And one of the reasons why people kind of reference or know Punky Brewster now is because it hit some topical stuff at the time. So there was the episode where Cherry got stuck in the refrigerator, and for a long time you knew that you needed to take the doors off your old refrigerators, or little kids will go in them and get stuck in them.
Oh, that's where that. Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
So I knew I had heard of Punky Brewster. I knew nothing about her. And as I'm as this is coming up as we're going to talk about this, I was like, I'm going to go to Wikipedia and find out what this show is about, because you're dropping us into the thick of things in season 2 with these 2 episodes. And what I loved is on Wikipedia, it literally says, Punky is a warm, funny, and bright child. Her father walked out on her family. Then her mother abandoned her at a Chicago shopping center. They were shopping for groceries, leaving Punky alone with her dog, Brandon. Afterwards, Punky discovers a vacant apartment in a local building. So she is living in a vacant apartment building? An apartment?
Yes. So she's living in a unit in Henry's building that he owns and rents out. And he finds her and he's going to kick her out, I guess, or give her back to, the state, and decides to foster her instead. And then they have a lovely relationship. There's a lot going on.
It's like working class Annie.
It is. So it was very working class. There were poor kids in it. There was Margot's the rich one. There were poor kids in it, and they dealt with just say no to drugs and stuff like that. And
wait, okay, the episode after this, I almost took a picture of this. Christina sent it to you today because I was fucking rolling. It was the episode after, and it was the kids do drugs or something very basic. I was like, I'm sorry, what? It was something weird about needing to be in a group, so they did drugs. So obviously it was about peer pressure and stuff. But I was like, what is the show?
They hit on some classic 80s topical stuff, what we were all getting stuck in refrigerators doing drugs in the 80s. So a TV show had to tell us to stop.
I've heard that about the 80s.
It's dangerous.
Wow.
The premise of this, let alone what we get to eventually in this episode, is so wild to me. I was taken aback by it. I'm like, this poor little kid. And it sounds like the first season is all about Henry attempting to become her foster parent and the struggles therein. I'm like, this is really heavy stuff for a kid's show. I believe, from what I understand, I'm not 100% sure if this is correct, it did air at night. It was a prime time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which is
weird. When it was in syndication, it wasn't. I think it was just ended up wherever when it was in syndication. But yeah, when it originally aired, it was like 8 o'clock, 8:30 or something. Yeah, which is strange.
It was right after football too. I said it was it was right after football games, and I'm like,
great lead-in.
Now we have The Last of Us is what we watch on Sunday nights. Like, oh, how far we've come.
Well, actually, if you...
Depressing narratives all around. Just one's a little bit more produced.
I'll pitch you an article about Last of Us versus Punky Brewster. What had the more lasting effects?
I'm ready to read that.
I'm ready. I'm very prepared for this.
Okay, so had you watched like a lot of the Punky Brewsters? Was this like something you would watch as a kid?
Yeah, it was always on. Like,
okay.
As my generation, TV raised us, so nobody was watching me. So it was always on, and I hadn't watched as an adult though, and I certainly have not watched this as an adult. I've Googled this because I needed to know if my memory of it was right, and it was, but I haven't watched it, and it is. My second note that I made was, I'm so sorry I made you watch this, because it doesn't play that great. It's very slow and plodding and very childish, especially considering it was in that time slot. Because even something like Full House, which would be like, half a dozen years later or whatever, Full House was more grown up than this. This was very like a baby show. Like, not to be rude to babies.
How dare you speak poorly of babies? But it definitely, like, seeing it was like a sitcom that played in that time slot is weird, because it felt like a kid show. Like the way that it just had the kid show vibe. It felt very juvenile in the way. Yeah,
definitely.
And then because like the part 1 is like setting up everything, and then the part 2 is where it goes like full wild, but that still that felt like a Nickelodeon show in a way. Not that, like, I don't mean that in a bad way, but like it definitely again felt like a more childish thing. Like I am having a very hard time imagining people after a football game watching that episode and being like,
it got canceled. Like, I think it got canceled midway through season 2, so I think maybe your reaction was the common reaction.
Yeah, from what I understand, it was very popular with kids, but like parents did not watch it, and so it was a ratings disaster.
Yeah.
And so they ended up canceling it. But that kind of leads us to these 2 episodes in particular. How did you see them? How old were you? Why is this your Scarred for Life pick? Give us your horror story. I want to hear it all, because this is wild.
Well, it just was kind of on. I don't remember how old I was. I don't think I watched it live. So maybe once it hit Syndicate, maybe I was 4 or 5. I was young when I saw it.
Yeah.
And it was probably the first really scary thing I ever saw. So obviously there's themes of abandonment. Looking back on it, there are other things that probably bothered me about it, but I wasn't really aware of it. It was specifically visuals in the second one. So the evil demon monster spirit in the cave slowly takes away Punky's friends and leaving her abandoned. And as there's a point where all the friends come back and they're like horrific. Now, looking at it through not just adult eyes, but 2023 eyes, it all looked very bad. But when I was small, a little boy's face in a wall, and a little girl with a seemingly very long neck kind of popping out of the wall, and then like a girl that looked dead yelling at you. It was just all a lot. And I used to have a reoccurring nightmare where I would think I was awake, laying in bed, and I would see Alan's face in the wall, that little face in the wall, and then I would realize I was dreaming, and then I couldn't wake up. It happened like 3 or 4 times. It was reoccurring and horrifying, and yeah, so it would make me sick to my stomach. I would get so worried thinking about the fact that I would go to bed and dream about that awful face. And I think I probably only saw it the one time. I don't ever think I saw it again. Why would I do that to myself?
Oh, shit.
So not having seen any other episodes, I have to ask, is this like any other episode? Because it feels, from what I have read, feels very far removed from a typical Punky Brewster episode.
And I'm glad you bring that up, because my husband even said, are they all like this? And I was like, no, they're not. So no. And even then, I liked the spooky version. I liked the weird version, the genre version of things. So like, being presented with like, oh, this is the Halloween Punky Brewster, this is the scary Punky Brewster, is very exciting. Now, it would have been more exciting if like they all dressed up and then maybe like went and got candy and then thought they saw a ghost and then all that stuff. But no, they saw a giant spider. And then, I'm so sorry, my vacuum just turned on. Hold on a second. Let me turn my vacuum off.
Technology.
Thanks. I forgot it was going to auto go at 6:30. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
What kind of fucking vacuum do you have? Jesus,
a little Roomba guy. Yeah, not really.
okay.
It's a fake Roomba. But he's a little Roomba man, and he said 6:30, time to clean.
Get your shit together. I have to clean.
Oops, sorry guys. So I have no idea what I was saying, but I'm sure it was very salient and important. Something
you were
about
you were talking about how like Halloween trick-or-treating.
Oh yeah.
But here's a spider.
Yes, if this had been a classic Halloween episode of a television show, I think I probably would have loved it, and I would have said, oh, remember that fun Halloween Punky Brewster where she was a cute little witch and there was this cat that talked? Well, that's Sabrina. But, something like that.
Right.
But it wasn't. There was a weird... It's also extremely trippy and psychedelic. Again, watching it now, it's like, what is this? I can't imagine what that looked like to a child. I don't know why they showed that to children.
And it's so totally different from the first half, because it's like literally just like, yes, we're going into the woods together. Like, it's Punky and her foster dad, and who's the woman?
That's Cherry's grandmother. She lives in the building with them. Okay,
so they've all gone camping / to the out of doors. And they have a cute little moment. So they're like, we're outside! Wow, it's summer! And I'm like, aw, childhood. And they get lost in a cave, and they see a fire burning, and they were like, oh, someone's been waiting for us. And then they just... Native Americans just come out of the shadows. And I was like, what? No! The 80s, truly, what a time. I was like, what? Was Christine just very aware as a child and this scared her?
Yes, I did. I was aware of the plight of the indigenous people. But no, it obviously plays in real poor taste now. Real poor taste.
Yeah.
Not good. All the Native American and indigenous folk stuff and the lore and the names is all like
savior complex of the characters.
We've been waiting for Punky Brewster, a young white girl who was abandoned in a grocery store, to save us. All on a hike with her foster father. Yeah, they've been waiting many years for this to happen. But that's the funny thing is I didn't even remember that. There are whole parts of this that I didn't remember. And then when so at the end the Princess Moon is played by I can't think of her name. I don't know why. Punky Brewster. Salil Moonfry, however you say her name. It's played by her. I remember
what a hippie
that.
Name.
I know, for real. I'm one to talk with my last name. But I remember that. I remember the little girl and dressed up. But then all the other stuff with the headdresses and the tomahawks, and I did not.
At one point, she's like, it's a tomahawk, and it's like CGI floating through the air. I was like... We have gone from a very straightforward, weird, standard cultural appropriation sitcom to just, something that feels like an experimental film someone made in their basement.
Yeah, because the way they visualize that, cave spirit, it's green screen and you can see some of it shimmering. It's very Star Trek, very classic Star Trek.
It's like someone took a pair of sequin pants and kind of waved it in front of a green screen, but put red in it, and it's but it's not fully there. I was watching it at the office I share with my husband, and he walked in, he's like, what is that? I was like, Punky Brewster. He's like, that's Punky Brewster? I'm like, I don't think this is what it usually is, but that's the episode I'm watching. Oh, I'm watching for the podcast, by the way. I'm just watching Punky Brewster, for fun. No hate to anyone who does, but...
Okay, so I don't even know where to start. Okay, watching this, the first episode, I was watching this going, okay, what about this is going to get spooky? And they're in the cave. There's the fire. They get told the story. They go down the path. The cave closes in on them like a mouth. Like there's stalactites and stalagmites, and they close behind them. Right after, of course, she says something about like what was the quote? It was oh, if things get too hairy, we can come back here. Goodbye, cave. Hello, world. And that's when everything starts to close. And things start to shake. The dog goes wild. I felt so bad for that poor dog as it is like freaking out, as like things are rumbling, things are falling down from the sky. It's kind of creepy in that moment. Like, kids in peril. This is scary. Yes, it looks a little cheap. Yes, it obviously was filmed on like a soundstage, and it's very kind of inexpensive looking, but still the idea behind it is a little traumatizing. And as they're walking, I kept thinking, this reminds me of It, of like some of the finale of It.
Oh, yep. Shit.
This came out before It. So, did Stephen King watch this and add this to his book? Because It came out like 2 years later. There's a giant spider. There's kids in the cave. Kids fighting It with like the idea of fear itself. And I'm like, there's some connections here.
It's actually a lot more than I had originally thought. You're completely right. I didn't even think about the fear thing and the love. Yep, that's very true.
I had to actually go look. I was like, did the book come out and this is like a riff on it? No, the book did not come out for like a year or two after this came out.
See, I just assumed the book had already been out and this was just kind of like a low key, let's just steal. No, that's fascinating.
Maybe Stephen King stole from Punky Brewster.
There are stranger places to find inspiration. Because as this was starting, so you both said like the first episode is like, oh, whatever. And I agree. But when they first walk into that cave and they see like themselves drawn on the wall,
yes,
I think that's defined me as a creative. Every story I've ever written is essentially that. Like that, like, have we been here before? Is like identity weird stuff that, and seeing it, I turned to my husband and I said, I'm about to be exposed for fraud, because everything that I've pulled so much stuff from this without really realizing it. Because Terry, you said like the stalactites coming in like teeth. I picture that regularly and had no idea where it was from until I rewatched this.
Wow.
I went, whoa, that's where that. But I picture somebody getting like closed in by a cave, when someone like gets stuck by like a cave in or something. That's what I picture, like things locking into place. And I was like, I bet it's because of this.
This left an indelible mark on you, it sounds like.
Clearly.
Huh.
But what I do love is at the very end of that, it's like leaving on like sort of a kind of slow paced note. And then all of a sudden there's a neon spider jump scare as it like lunges at the screen. And I was like, what?
Yep. And then episode over.
Gotta wait another week to find out what's going to happen.
Did I take a screenshot? I think I did, because it like I paused it. And that was the first time Steve walked by and was like, what the fuck is that? And I was like, well, that was not the weird, like, I love a good, like, freeze frame dissolve, like, ending to a horror movie. Was not expecting to get that at the end of Punky Brewster.
High art. This is high art.
High art. High fucking art. Wow.
So in this first episode in particular, there are some, like, it's cheesy, but I have to say some of it did kind of make me chuckle. There's like a quote where, I don't remember who said it, but someone says, look, a duck, and then it vanishes, and they're like, where'd it go? He ducked. I'm like, this is dumb.
I laughed at that.
I still laughed at it as an adult.
There's some good like stock jokes in this.
There are.
I think a stock joke can be funny.
It's a cute little kid gags, like peasants, like very cute, like kids being assholes that make you kind of giggle. You're like,
Margot.
Okay.
What is her story?
Margot is very rich. I do not remember why she hangs out with these kids. I can't remember. But she is very rich and she is very elitist and she thinks she is very much above them all. She was kind of always one of my secret favorites. I don't know why. I think this really led into I like the bitchy girl. I like the bimbo. I like the rich bitch. These are all fun stereotypes, fun archetypes to play with.
Best, but yeah.
Yes, I am a huge fan. So again, this might have seeded that. I was like, that Margot, terrible to everyone. I like her. I like her style.
But she does get the best bit of dialogue in this. There's the moment in episode 2 where she's sitting there like shocked, and she says, "I can't take any more of this. I'm a delicate person, you know. I have bird bones. Tweet, tweet, tweet." It's hilarious.
Yep.
I ended up having to rewind that a few times because I was cackling at this performance. Like, she gives a great little bit of line delivery there.
It's so weird, and honestly, I call myself a delicate flower constantly, and I wonder if it's a runner of hers. I wonder if she like says stuff like that a lot, because that could explain another weird personality
Christine,
quirk.
you're just a walking reference to Punky Brewster.
It's true. What we found out is I am 90% Punky Brewster, and that's it. The other 10% is probably Jim Henson.
There are worse things to be. She seems like she's got gumption, and like she's a sassy, cool, resourceful little kid. So,
yeah, and she, the power of love. There's worse things to learn.
Yeah, that's true. There are worse things to learn.
And then the other kids, rounding out this little bit of group, we have Alan. Who is Alan? What is his...
I hate Alan. I do not remember Alan at all. Other than his awful little face in that wall, I don't remember anything about him. It's awful, and
it's awful.
It looks bad. It looks bad, but it also looks like unsettling. Like
deeply.
He's got like weird, like yellowed rat teeth. It's very strange.
It's very 1980s creature feature. Like very. Definitely. It feels like I got vibes of like one of the creatures in like a Argento giallo that pops out of a basement, kind of like vibes.
Yeah, that pasty skin. Ugh, gross.
And then there's Cherry.
Cherry. Yeah.
Cherry.
That tripped me up as a kid because her name is Cherry. The actress, her character's name is Cherry, and it wasn't spelled like the cherry that I knew.
Right. Same.
This show really got to me.
Cherry Johnson plays herself because Cherry Johnson plays Cherry Johnson in the show. I'm like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah.
How does that work? Why?
That could break a little kid's brain. I didn't know. It
breaks mine
about all that. She was also great. I liked her a lot. She's very stylish. All of these kids, very stylish.
Oh, Punky is incredibly stylish.
Yeah, what the fuck? Like, Punky, I want to raid your wardrobe. Shit, like, that's, like, the aesthetic I want as an adult.
Well, that was a thing back then, too, like, that Punky Brewster aesthetic. Like, you could get clothes that looked like that, and, like, wearing 2 different Converse. She was kind of like Madonna for, like, very little kids in the 80s. Like, thank you, Terry. Thank you for appreciating that.
Because all I'm thinking about in particular is Madonna with the cones.
I was I was like Punky Brewster with just like tiny little like ice cream cones on her. I was like,
not exactly like that.
I know.
Like, especially during the Like a Virgin era in the 80s, there was like tweens and teens that were very much into like lace gloves and stuff. So you got a little sister, maybe she wants to wear 2 different color Converse like Punky Brewster.
I'm here for it.
Wait, I feel like my grandparents like once compared me to Punky Brewster because I liked wearing like quote unquote quirky clothes. So that makes some things are
there you go
connecting. Interesting. It's just been Punky Brewster this whole time. Punky Brewster is the creator of the universe.
Thanks to Punky Brewster that Stephen King has that book. We're finding out now. You're welcome.
I mean, oh my god, we wouldn't. Oh wow, this is just we can't go down this road.
I mean, okay, but here's the other thing that I realized though is that so we get Alan's face in the wall, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's like a brief shot of him as a zombie-ish character.
Yeah. Was that him or was that Margot?
I thought it was him. Is it not?
They were like young kids with blonde hair. I wasn't quite sure.
Well, Margot had that like the safari hat on. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
That's not what it's called.
She was like a skeleton, right?
She
like,
was a skeleton.
Dancing skeleton.
Oh, that's not the skeleton. I forgot about
that skeleton. Hers is arguably the best. So yeah, she does have a floating skeleton, like a Halloween store skeleton, and she has like a zombie face when up close. But then the skeleton like bursts apart I don't understand.
And then the dog turns into a giant skeleton at one point, too.
Yeah, a dinosaur skeleton replaces that dog. It's such a huge skeleton.
It's so big. I was like, I don't understand scale. I was like, this entity doesn't understand scale very well.
But whoever it is that has like the close, there's like an up close face shot, and it's like a little green. I don't know if it's because the light is reflected on him, and there's like a little scar or whatever. And she's like, Punky, Punky. It brought me, speaking of Stephen King, back to Pet Sematary, the movie with the little kid like with the knife, and I'm like, aesthetics. There is a direct continuation here of aesthetics with Stephen King work. I think he stole.
This might be the ultimate gateway to Stephen King.
We broke it wide fucking open.
The conspiracy goes all the way to the top.
All the way to the fucking top.
So, Mary Beth, what did you think of this, watching this?
What did I think watching this? I think I was mostly just shocked, like, with the second episode especially, of like, it's kind of similar. I was like, okay, so we're gonna get some kind of like scary, like they see something scary in the cave, like, you know, standard like scary episode situation. Like they get lost in the cave and think a shadow is a ghost and it's actually like a squirrel, and they get saved and it'll be great. Which is like things that would have like, you know, scared me as a kid. But then this just goes full on fucking weird, like nonsense horror movie route of like ghosts popping up with ghostly tomahawks and learning about the power of love. So it just was such a it felt like something that you would see on Adult Swim at like 1 a.m. You know what I mean? Like that would be a parody of what a sitcom is supposed to be. Which I find so funny that, again, that this was debuting that, like, prime time on on Sunday nights. Like, I want to be a fly on the wall in all of the homes where they watch that, and we're just like... But I do kind of admire that, though. I was like, honestly, this is fucking nuts, and I kind of respect a show like this, especially not having, like, all the context about it, like, going nuts like that, and just making a scary episode that is, like... a cosmic horror being haunting a lake, and like these kids having to solve the riddle of the cosmic horror that no one else can solve. Like this, it's always like these sad fucking characters that are like put into these situations that are like, yes,
You're
that they're like
it again.
Now, what did you think about this Punky Brewster episode, though?
Like everything you're saying, you could be actually talking about seeing it for the first time.
I mean, true. And it kind of is. I mean, good lord. But I mean, I was very pleasantly surprised by what I saw, and I'm gonna keep it sounds like I'm talking about it. Now I can't stop thinking about it. And I'm gonna just keep thinking about it, trip over my words. But again, I had no experience with this. So I was just like, I thought it was like a weird, again, I thought it was like a weird kid show. I was like, okay, nope, not that. So, yes.
But I was going to bring you back to what you were talking about earlier, Christine, because the thing that jumped out at me in particular that was not necessarily like supernatural horror, but was horrifying in and of itself is when all of her friends are going away, they're vanishing. And then she has this vision of Henry and Mrs. Johnson, and Mrs. Johnson says, all I found was an empty cave. And Henry says, I guess we'll have to accept the fact that Punky and Cherry are gone. C'est la vie. And all of a sudden, they're talking about how hard it is to raise a kid, how expensive it is. And they're like, yeah, it's time to move on to other things. We're going to go to Club Med. Like, it digs into this idea that Punky is afraid of being abandoned. And is afraid
He definitely doesn't have abandonment issues. It's
definitely
fine.
Not. And she is afraid that the people that she loves are going to eventually leave her. And that, I think, kind of ties into a little bit of what I'm understanding the series is about. But like, that's a heavy thing to just plop into this episode.
It is, and it really does like a chicken or the egg kind of thing for me. Like, so did it bother me because it had all these deep themes of abandonment and the people that you're supposed to rely on disappearing or leaving you, like a death analog to, or did it did the visuals upset me, and then I just go back later and say, oh, this happens to be about abandonment as well. I'm not really sure. I don't know what little me's trauma was at that point. I don't know what she had collected. She might have had a lot, and so the abandonment stuff might have really hit. But it makes sense if you're just looking at it as like a story in this show, because Punky's dad walked out on her, and then her mom left her at a grocery store. Everybody she's cared about has just willingly walked away from her. So of course the most horrifying thing she can think of is that she loses all these new people in her life. And that stuff with Henry and Mrs. Johnson is heartbreaking. Like the fact that she can sit there and like imagine a conversation where two adults just decide they don't want kids anymore is just really upsetting.
Well, and what I got kind of from this, again, without any other context from this episode, is that they are kind of her pseudo parents. You have Henry, and then you also have Mrs. Johnson. Because I got the kind of like familial feel from her too, and I don't know if that's true in the series or not. But that's what initially for me she was presented as, and then by the end of the episode, the fact that they are leaving just as casually as her parents seem to have left her is like, fuck. That's a lot.
It is a lot, and I think this was very high concept, and I think it was a really great idea. I still don't know if it was an appropriate thing to do for a children's show. It just seems like it's just a lot. It's a lot happening.
It went very avant-garde very quickly.
Yes.
It did. We didn't even talk about Mr. Pieces, which was horrifying.
Oh my God. Mr. Pieces, played by the ghost actor, the Ghost in the Subway ghost actor.
Yep. And the organ grinder from Batman Returns. I love that guy.
Oh shit, that's right.
I think this was
shit.
I was going to say, I think this was the first thing I saw him in. I'm going to say this was definitely the first thing I saw him in. And I knew it was him because, again, I've looked up pictures of this, but he's a man and his head is in one place and his arms and his legs are in a different place. That imagery of his arms coming out of a boulder and his leg just hang, I think about that all the time, and I don't think I knew it was from this. It's really disturbing. Like, the cave ate him.
That is a disturbing image. Like, I was like, what the fuck is this? And it's played off a little bit like jokey, like someone, shakes the hand and kicks the knee, and the knee, like the leg kind of kicks up, like if you were to go to like a doctor and they're testing your like reflexes or whatnot. But it's horrifying when you think about it. And then his head is just discombobulated coming out of a rock in the middle of the room. It's like, who comes up with this? Were they high?
I mean, look, maybe, but when you watch it high, it didn't make any more sense. Maybe it didn't to somebody that did that, not me, obviously. But I think at the end of the day, what I learned is that there was some genuinely disturbing, weird stuff in this, which I always worried there wasn't. I always worried, like, why did I get so upset about this baby show? But I think they really were doing stuff.
There were some weirdly like upsetting things going on there that are like, what is this? And Punky having to go by herself, understanding the power of love and self-acceptance. Like, good for her, but also like that's a terrifying thing to like watch a child confront.
Because how old is she?
What?
Like, little.
How old is she?
6 or 8 or something.
Yeah,
she's little.
Baby.
That's an existential crisis to be having at such a young age.
Well, and then she's like, this isn't real. It's playing a trick on me. And then she looks over and the dog is the dinosaur. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, this is just so much happening in 24 minutes. Just like jam-packed full of weird, trippy imagery that, like, did Phil Tippett help animate it? Maybe. Like, Jesus Christ. Well, did he get his start on fucking Punky Brewster?
So what's funny is that this episode did kind of scar a generation. And I did find a Yahoo interview with the director Art Dielhen, I think. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He directed, before this episode, he had directed 20 episodes, and in total did 44 of the entire series. And when they're interviewing him, his quote was, quote, "So basically you're saying I scarred an entire generation? I'm sorry, I wasn't responsible. I was just taking orders." And his thought about this was that it was just a very challenging episode to direct. And so he had a very different experience making it than, in quotes, than you describe having seen it. And he says that they always tried to make the set as fun and playful as they could for the kids, because they would be going to school and then they'd come to the set, and their buoyancy, kindness, and desire for fun played into every scene. They also had a little quote from Cherry Johnson, and she was talking about how like they were just laughing while doing this, because apparently on the weekends they would have slumber parties between Moon and Foster, during which they'd watch flicks like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Omen, while their parents were cooking blood red foods like spaghetti and chili.
Oh,
we would gross everyone out around
Iconic.
us. We were having the time of our lives, she said, laughing. We were just different kinds of kids, I guess, because we knew it wasn't real. When we were shooting Perils, we knew there was a props department. We probably saw them making the spider and hoisting it up on its wires, so I don't think the crew was worried about us being afraid. If anything, they had to be afraid of us trying to jump and play on it.
I love that for them, honestly, because it did cross my mind last night when I was watching it. I was like, I wonder if like this was upsetting, if seeing like a guy in the walls was upset. Like, but I mean, it seems like everyone let those children know that it was fake. Like they knew not to take it seriously. I, on the other hand, needed somebody to tell me that.
Well, and I feel like probably on the set, like building a giant spider, it probably like I feel like whenever I talk to people who don't like horror movies but are in horror movies, like you just see how everything is made, so it's like so much easier to be like it's not like disconnect from it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you see a giant spider, or you're just a weird fucking kid too, and like that also is an incredibly valid thing. Like, and you're just like fuck yeah, like this is really weird, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
You'd also brought up Cherry's head coming out of the shadows. That gave me Ju-on the Grudge, I think the second one in particular, with like the head. It felt very like J-horror of like the head kind of popping out of the shadows. And I could see how that would be terrifying as a kid.
Yeah. I definitely, Alan was exactly how I remembered, but Cherry, for some reason in my head, her neck is very long and she looks around a corner with it.
Okay.
Look, clearly my brain just crafted that one to terrify myself, because it did not happen. But amazing. I guess there was enough there for me to push it to something terrifying, even more so than what we saw. So
it's funny though that face, because in the same interview, Cherry said that her mother still has the molding of her head, and she hadn't seen it in 30 years. And where was it? Like, okay, the molding of my head was used for the prop with the red eyes. My brother put it on his face recently, and I hadn't seen it in 30 years. So I was like, what is that? And so, like, that is something that she still has the prop of.
I mean, I guess I'm glad it's in good hands and not going to be activated to come after me at some point.
That's true. Well, so... You know, this made Terry and I think a lot about, like, other shows that have had, like, scary episodes or things like that. And I think, like, Terry, is there any episodes of shows that stuck out to you that, like, had some kind of impact, like, scary impacts on you?
Yeah, so I do remember seeing, I used to watch Family Matters, and there was this one episode called Stevil, and it's like it was from 1996. It was the Halloween episode where Steve Urkel finds himself owning a ventriloquist dummy identical to him, and he wishes his newfound friend could be alive, and then he gets his wish, and Steve begins to torment Steve and the entire Winslow family. And when this came out, I was definitely like 15, so I would have been 15 when I saw this. Didn't really scare me, but I think it kind of fits into like this idea of like a show that's for kids that is typically like, did I do that? Like that's what Family Matters is, and that's what you think of it, is like silliness and Urkel being dumb and being kind of that nerd, and then you get this one episode where it's like full on horror. I
used to watch Family Matters as well. I was a TGIF gal. That was on TGIF for a while. This does not look familiar. I do not think I ever saw this episode, and I'm very glad, because it looks like at one point he strangles Steve Urkel. So
yeah, I think so. It's been a very long time, and I honestly completely forgot about it till I was searching online for like, I was like, I know that there has to be like this episodes like this, and this one came up, and I was like, I remember that doll because there was a picture of the doll, and I remembered seeing that. I don't remember much about the episode, but I do remember that creepy doll. And there's apparently an episode of Boy Meets World called "And Then There Was Sean," where the kids are locked in detention, and they realize they're in danger because they're trapped in a room with a dead body, and they escape to find the entire school is on lockdown, and that there's potentially a murderer. And I'm like, this is not Boy Meets World. This is horror.
Delightful. Yeah, I can't say I've seen that one either. I'm trying to think of other ones too, and I can't think of any because I just think of fond memories of like the Pretty Little Liars Halloween episodes, stuff like that.
The one that like that comes to mind always is from my favorite show as a kid, Arthur, which is an animated kids show. Are either of you familiar with Arthur?
Yes.
I've never seen it, but I'm familiar.
So I grew up on Arthur. It was on PBS. I watched it all the time after school. Animated aardvark who has a bunch of friends, and they just, live their lives as anthropomorphized characters in Animal Town. And they have a couple like Halloween episodes that were actually really fucking creepy. And the one that really got me was when they get locked in the library. And, like, it's, like, a haunted library, and, and it was just, like, so fucking creepy, and I was always terrified of getting locked into places after hours and getting stuck in places after hours. Like, that would happen to me, and creepy shit would happen to me in the library. So that is what I always think about, like, because, again, it was never, like, a scary show, but, like, that one. And there's another episode that was, like, definitively saying ghosts are real, because someone's house is haunted, and there's, like, actual family of ghosts that live there. And I was like, Arthur's confirmed ghosts are real. Well, fuck, then, like, it's over. So that's always, like, I know that there's so many others, but, like, I couldn't find any of the ones, because the Arthur ones are the ones that, like, really stick out. And then I think of shows like Courage the Cowardly Dog.
I was going to say, I know Courage is, like, a spooky one, but, like, there's that one episode that, like, you've brought up a couple times on the podcast before. Yes.
When they steal the slab, the Curse of Ramses, where it's, like, because that's so, like, I grew up watching, like, Cartoon Network, and, like, some of this, I had, like, Danny Phantom, who was also a sexual awakening for me, which was, like, he's a ghost, and he hunts and fights ghosts. But, yeah, Courage the Cowardly Dog wasn't always scary, but definitely the slab, where they, like, there's a mummy who is basically telling them to give this artifact back and, like, swarming them with plagues. Yeah, that one's pretty fucked up. But I fucking love that. I loved that show so much. And my mom hated that I loved that show.
It's so wholesome.
I guess. She didn't like the brand of shows from Cartoon Network that were, like, kind of gross, but, like, not terrible. Oh my god, she hated Ren and Stimpy. That was Nickelodeon, but my stepdad loved Ren and Stimpy. We'd watch it all the time when she wasn't around, but it is the most disgusting show on the planet. Like,
we never had cable, so I never got to experience Ren and Stimpy or any of these other ones, even as an adult.
My stepdad had it all on VHS. We just watched he bought the VHS tapes of Ren and Stimpy, and we watched it over and over again growing up. If you want body horror, watch a Ren and Stimpy episode. Are you fucking kidding me?
I mean, I've seen images, and I'm like, what?
It's pretty gross. It's pretty gross.
Disgusting. It is disgusting.
My favorite Halloween episode as a kid, though, was Mystery Weekend from Saved by the Bell. It didn't scare me, but it was like this one-off episode, might have been probably a Halloween episode, where all the kids end up going to, like, basically a mystery murder weekend. And
I remember that. I love that setup, too. That's a classic setup.
Classic.
You take all your great established characters and just throw them in a murder mystery, and that's always fun. That sounds really familiar. There was a really scary episode of DuckTales where they meet druids. I don't know if anybody
Well, I mean, we had a DuckTales episode. Wasn't it DuckTales? No, it was Darkwing Duck. We had Darkwing Duck with the Twin Peaks.
The Twin Peaks one.
Yeah.
That one disturbed me too. I was a little older when that happened, but I definitely got what it was. I had already watched Twin Peaks. My mom made me watch Twin Peaks. So I definitely was like, I know what this reference is and I understand it. Yay me. But I can imagine without context, that one's really disturbing.
Yeah.
Oh god, there was another fucking show that I just thought of, and then it left my brain that I was going to bring up. Oh, the Simpsons Treehouse of Horrors episodes.
Oh, my favorite.
Specifically, so they were not the only one that ever scared me, and it sounds wild, but it's the one where Homer, they find a portal into like the different dimensions, and Homer,
the 3D dimension,
the 3D dimension one.
Mm-hmm.
That fucked me up. Like the existential terror I felt of like him falling through into another dimension.
He pokes the hole in the ground too, and it starts to like...
Yes, and he like falls into our dimension, and then it ends, and I think those kinds of episodes that just like end without any kind of resolution, and I know it was like a Treehouse of Horror, so it's different, but I felt like, what are the implications of this? like my small brain was just like, what? Like, is he stuck? Like, what's going on? And I saw it so young, but it like broke my brain, and it stuck with me forever. And then some fucking t-shirt company sold a long sleeve shirt that was exactly that episode. So of course I own it, because I was like, how is this very specific, like, one part of Treehouse of Horror, like of all the other ones, this is the one they made a shirt out of. But that one really got me too, as a young child. I think
I used to love those episodes of Simpsons. My parents did not let me watch them, but I would try to when they weren't watching.
Your parents clearly cared for you very much. My parents just freewheeling, watching Poltergeist, Mainline and Treehouse of Horrors.
I don't know why Simpsons were such a touchy subject. I really don't. It was the same way with South Park when I was much older. I was not allowed to watch it. So my friend would tape episodes of it off of, and I didn't also have cable, but my friend would tape episodes off and drop them off at my house.
Wow.
Bootlegging. The original bootlegging.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do we want to wrap up and give this our rating out of 5?
Before we do, though, because did you say you had like nightmares after watching this?
Yes. Yeah. Reoccurring nightmares.
And yep. You revisited this episode as an adult?
Yes.
What did you think as it still is? Did it bring you back to that childhood fear?
Yes.
At all?
At one point I started crying because I was emotional about her being abandoned. But also because
understandable.
When it first started and I started to recognize it, I have a little Fitbit, and I looked and my heart rate skyrocketed when it started.
Shit.
I was like, I gotta calm down. I'm in it for the long haul. Because if you watch both episodes, it's like 45 minutes or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, I gotta pace myself. And there were a couple places where I was like, oh, I don't like this. But I think once we finally got into like that second episode, and I was like, this is a kids show. It's fine. It didn't hit me. I'm glad. I would have been very concerned for myself if I was thrown into quite the same frenzy I was when I was in single digits. But it definitely, I still found it disturbing, and I still think like I feel justified. I feel righteously justified in my horror.
I mean, I don't blame you. Now, I will say that I was prepared initially when I found out there was going to be spiders in this to be like, you brought me a fucking surprise spider, because that is a trend. But it was fine. It was funny.
It's a big spider, and then the dog fights it. It's really cute.
It was really cute. And then she uses the tomahawk, and it's gushing goo.
Which is like, weird.
It's fine.
Like, wow.
I know. It does a lot of stuff. Like Mary Beth said, it's like cosmic. It's like a folk tale. It's existential dread. It's all these weird things. Look, man, I just want a ghost to pop out and teach him a lesson. I don't need a psychedelic spider.
Yeah, I don't need this weird, like, bedazzled entity to creepily whisper at me from the shadows and sparkle around. I loved it. Wow.
Yes.
Did you know, and have you seen the revival?
I did know. I have not seen.
Yeah, back in 2021,
Back in 2021, Jesus Christ. It's not that long ago. Fucking God.
Peacock did a revival of it with Punky and Cherie as adults where Punky is now a divorced mother raising 3 children.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
She lives in the same Chicago apartment where she grew up with her foster father, works as a photographer just like he did, and she encounters a girl at Fenster Hall named Izzy who was abandoned by her mother.
Cool.
I wonder if they had a Halloween episode. I'll have to go look.
Yes. Absolutely.
I don't think it'll stack up.
Kind of need to, right?
All right, Terry.
Yes.
How many creepy wall kids out of 5? Creepy wall children, more specifically, do you give Punky Brewster episodes 6 and 7 from season 2?
I don't know how to answer that, Mary Beth.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. I agree with that statement.
As a kid, this would have been right up my alley. I'll be perfectly honest. If I had seen this as a kid, I would have been like, this is fucking cool. As an adult, it definitely has shown its age in terms of both the racial dynamics as well as the effects. But I think if I were to take myself back and being a kid Terry watching this, I probably would give it 4 creepy wall kids. But as an adult, that's more of like a 2 or 2.5. I was not appalled by it, but I also have no desire to go seek out any of the other episodes. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. But as a kid, this would have been right up my fucking alley for sure. What about you, Mary Beth?
Yeah, it was definitely something I would have loved as a kid, but I think I give it 3 right now because I think I'm very impressed with just it existing as it is and as it was and as it came out. I think I'm always impressed when shows like this are able / just say fuck it and do things like this. And it's like, it makes no sense and is kind of insane, but also good for you for doing it, I guess. Love to see people taking risks like that in the 1980s when we're kind of used to thinking, sitcoms and what we expect from sitcoms. And it's always kind of interesting to see something like this, especially in a show about a young abandoned child. It's a fascinating cultural object, and I'm very glad we experienced it, but I will forever be questioning what was going on in the writer's room that day. I would have loved to be a part of it and enjoy whatever they were enjoying to get into that headspace. Maybe. But anyway, Christine, you have the final word. How many creepy wall children out of 5 do you give these episodes of Punky Brewster?
4.5 creepy wall children.
Hell yeah.
I have taken a 0.5 out because obviously they're a little slowly paced. But that's it. That's my only problem with the pacing. No,
respect.
If I had a kid, oh my gosh, somebody lend me their kid so I can show them this. I want to see what a kid would do now.
Ooh,
Quick.
I have.
Quick, give me a kid.
Quick! Children? I'm going to show one of my cousins.
Quick, bring me a kid so I can terrorize it or him or her.
Maybe they'll be like, meh, this doesn't do anything for me. I have a phone and this is boring.
Look, sometimes the weird shit that they watch on YouTube Kids is a weird, terrifying, liminal hellscape of just bizarre animation. So at this point, they're probably like, yes, so. And it's like, you are built of different stuff than I, my child. Shit.
Well, thank you so much, Christine, for joining us and having us watch Punky Brewster. Where can our listeners find you? And do you have anything coming up that you can share or talk about?
I am most easily found currently still on Twitter at xteen_Makepeace. Just all right there, the way it sounds. I also have a website in case that disappears. It's just ChristineMakepeace.com. I don't really have anything. I'm writing about Stoker. So if you follow me on Twitter, then you'll get to see my article about Stoker. I don't really have anything coming up, but you can also buy my book. My name's Christine Makepeace, and you just search for me on Amazon. It's very lucky to have a very strange last name because there's no one encroaching on my stuff.
Hell yeah.
And it's easy to spell. Just like what it sounds like.
You'd be surprised, though. It really trips people up.
Yeah, that's fair. I say that. I'm like, no, people really do like to overcomplicate. So, yeah.
That's true.
Well, listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. What was your experience with, Peaky Blinders?
That would be a completely different episode. If you're a kid and you've seen Peaky Blinders, hit us up. What?
I don't know why I was like Peaky Blinders. I'm like, that's not what this is.
I kept thinking that this was, what is her name? Pippi Longstocking? I kept getting those two of them confused. Isn't that her name?
Yeah, there's another, I think, abandoned girl child.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We were doing that for a while.
Yeah, we really loved it. Anyway, listeners, what was your experience with Punky Brewster? Specifically, did you see these episodes? Or Peaky Blinders? What do you think of Killian Murphy? You can send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
I'm a Kaylee Dreadful.
God, Jesus Christ, I trip myself up every time. And don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. And if you want to help support us, you can find us on Patreon.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there. But most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.